Welcome to The Game Changer with Dr. Sharalyn, where purpose meets performance and leaders are built to shift legacies. I'm Dr. Sharalyn Payne, executive strategist, speaker, and the secret weapon behind leaders who drive transformation at the highest levels. Each episode delivers bold truths, power skills, and real-world strategies to help you lead with precision, show up with presence, and build the kind of influence that outlasts trends. This is the space where high-impact decisions are born, where influence is intentional, and where the bold don't just lead, they change the game. So if you're ready to rise, ready to lead, and ready to create the kind of impact that moves markets, missions, and minds, you're in the right place. Welcome, Game Changer. So thrilled that you are with me today for our very special podcast guest host with me today. She is a phenom. When I tell you this woman, I met her and she has already changed my life. And so you're going to be in for a treat. She has something great to share, something amazing, inspirational, absolutely life-changing. And I am not just saying that. Now, if you've been listening to me, you know that I do not say things just to be saying them. And so this woman is truly a game changer. She has a powerful story. She has wisdom. She has insights, revelation. She has a wealth of knowledge for her to share with us. And I'm just so grateful she's going to be imparting this information with us today. So I'm going to ask you to do yourself a favor, not do us a favor, do yourself a favor. Grab your paper, grab your pen, and take copious notes. I'm going to encourage you to go a step further, actually. Close the door and tell people that you are busy. You want to hear every single word that she shares. She has a story that's going to absolutely blow your mind. And I believe you're going to see your own life, your own self through the story that she shares. With that, Dr. Robinson-Winemiller, how are you?
I'm doing great. And how are you? I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm doing good, actually. Now, can I call you Dr. Melissa?
Sure, you can just call me Melissa if you want. We're friends. It's all good.
I want to be respectful. Dr. Melissa, tell us about who you are, the work that you do, and how you help people with your business.
So now I am an empathy and leadership expert, and I am serious enough about this that I'm actually working on my second doctorate in interdisciplinary leadership with a dissertation on empathy and leadership. But I didn't start out that way. I was actually a performing musician for a long time and loved it. I mean, I loved the performing and I loved the people and I got to play with people like Ray Charles and man, I'm
Wow.
Steamroller. I mean, these aren't people that would have been in my orbit at all. So I'm actually very grateful that I had the opportunity. But the problem with music is I'm also very partial to food, shelter, and clothing. And, you know,
We all are.
being
We all are.
right, right. I like things like benefits. So I was like, well, I guess I better dig in and get my doctorate and, go be a professor. Because if you do that in music, your performance is your research. So you're still performing, you're still doing things, but you're also with the students, you're able to take that love and give it to the next generation. And, kind of you get to do it all. So I got my doctorate, got a job as a French horn professor, which there aren't a lot of them.
Right?
And headed out west. But within my first term, I was assaulted by one of my colleagues, which then caused everything to just spiral. I found out just how toxic the situation I was in was. And by the end of it all, I lost my career. And by that time, I was in my early mid 40s. So it's really all I had known, it's all I'd done. And I ended up having to leave and give it all up. Um, which was hard. I really spun out for a while. But in the process, I started asking myself what had gone wrong and what was so wrong with this system and how had it become so toxic. And either nobody cared or people wanted it that way. Some people were benefiting from this. And it kept
Hold on
bringing me
for a
back.
second.
Yeah,
Some people
yeah.
were benefiting. I got to interrupt you. Some people were benefiting from a toxic culture. Did I just hear you say that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
How do people benefit from a toxic culture?
Well, if you think of the people at the top, at the very top, if this toxic culture is keeping a system in place that they want, and it's creating something, whether it's profit, whether it's power, whether it's just that need to be in charge. If we're talking toxic, well, leadership. I mean, you're talking toxic leadership. When you get these toxic leaders, sometimes it doesn't always make sense. It's just about power. It's just about keeping people on their toes. It's just about having that sense of, I am the one in charge. So some toxic situations create themselves, but some of them are created that way on purpose, just like a
Hmm,
toxic relationship. Someone's benefiting.
that is so true. That's so true. When you look at it from that lens, I am reminded of an organization that I worked for, and it was extremely, extremely toxic. And to your point, the people there, the leaders at the top benefited. And then you had those who were in power and people who had never been in power before who were promoted. And now they're in power and they feel important and they feel like they're in charge. And
Mhm.
off to the races they went. And it was absolutely straight up, for lack of better words, it was crazy. And it had a significant impact on me, but it's not about me right now. So we're going to go back to you.
Well, no, this is a conversation because if you've experienced it and I've experienced it, how many of your listeners have experienced it? It's not, that's the one thing that really became clear to me is that I was not the only one.
Mm,
This nastiness festers in so many places and it becomes just part of the culture and part of the system. And, like for me, I couldn't get out of it. This assault happened within my first semester. And it took me 7 years before I finally just said, that's enough. I can't take this anymore. It's
wow.
destroying me. And a lot of people are like that. They're in a job for whatever reason and they can't just leave. So that's the big thing that really spurred me into this is I'm not the only one. And I want the people that are also in these situations to understand more about what could help the situation, but also that they're not alone.
That's true. I'm so happy you said that because for years I felt like I was the only one. All of my friends who worked somewhere else, family members who worked at another other organizations were not experiencing this. So it felt like I'm the only one. And when I would share my story and what was happening with me, people thought that I was the crazy person, that I was the problem, that I was being too outspoken or I was doing this. And I really wasn't being outspoken. I was doing my job, doing the role that they paid me to do. The challenge was that they had people who were in positions who not should not have been in those positions. So they were threatened by me doing my job, raising questions, asking questions, providing, key insights, right? Sharing them here at the areas of opportunity, the things that they hired me to do, no more, no less. And
Yeah.
with that, it became a problem. And I found myself really struggling in that organization. But again, I would share with my family, share with my friends, hey, this is what's happening to me. And everyone thought it was me. It wasn't until I met someone years later who worked at that same organization who shared with me her experience just by chance. We were having a meeting about the work. And then she said, I just got to say, and she just spilled the beans as to her experience. It was identical. Her experience and
Wow.
my experience at the organization, and with the same key leaders, the behaviors that they were doing. And I'd worked with her enough that I had an idea of her working style, her personality. Is this something that she was, would have been doing on her own? Like, how was she consistently showing up? She was always a professional, always, very strong, very, I would say if I was putting together a team, a person who, if I wanted to win, I would absolutely place her on the team. Not because she was going to be nice and sweet, but because she was going to be professional, timely, and get the job done effectively, efficiently. And that's the work, right? And give us more than what we asked and be upfront with, hey, this is what's needed for us to be able to do this. So I liked her working style. Never would have imagined in a million years that what she was experiencing I had already experienced and gone through. And so it's amazing to see how when we talk to people about a toxic culture, no one wants to admit that and maybe perhaps some people are not in a toxic culture, but nobody really wants to talk about it. You know, the culture is toxic, but it's beat you down kind of like that abusive relationship where you don't want to talk about it or tell anybody because you're ashamed and you're
Yes.
embarrassed and you're humiliated. And what am I going to do next? And so
Yes.
I'm not trying to compare this to domestic violence for those who want to write and comment and misinterpret what I'm saying. Let's be clear. What I am saying, though, is that if we were to look at some of the things that those survivors are going through as they're trying to exit that relationship or while they're in that relationship, can be the same. Because as Dr. Melissa shared, for years, 7 years, I was in it. I didn't know how to get out of it. So, how did you get out of it?
It eventually hit the point that it was either get out or lose myself completely. Um, if I'm being really honest, I mean, the drinking had started, it was out of control. Um, it just, I couldn't take it anymore. My mental health was so beaten down that there was just nothing left. So
Wow.
I actually just said, I can't. I don't know where I'm going, but it can't possibly be any worse than this. And
Wow.
that's, I mean, when you're pushed to the edge and that's it, then that's the choice you make, right? Either I'm going to lose myself completely one way or the other, or at least I can keep a shred of who I am and try to rebuild. So
Wow. Keep a shred of who I am and try to rebuild. That's courageous. Did you ever find the courage to go and share with your colleagues? And I don't know how it works in academia but I'm going to say your leaders or HR or anyone, what happened with this particular coworker. And did the coworker know you? Did you guys know each other, have any relationship prior to this assault?
nope. I hadn't even been on campus I mean, it was like the beginning of the semester. I hadn't even been in town for 2 whole months. I didn't know this guy. I, by the time it happened, I'd already gotten inklings of some rumors and I mean, students talk, and it's just
Mhm.
like being in a workplace, right? People talk. And there was some gossip and there was some stuff, because the thing is when someone does something like this, they don't do it once. They do it as long as they can get away with it. And that's exactly what happened. I was new. I was fresh meat because I didn't have any support. I didn't have any family. I was still trying to figure out, where's the best grocery store? Where do I get my hair cut? Where's the dentist? Much less worrying about this. And the he picked me out as a mark. He knew
Mhm.
he knew exactly what he was doing. When I went to our boss, I was told that as a junior female faculty member, if I was stirring up trouble in my first term, that I was never going to get promoted, as if I cared. And at that point, so our two offices were right next door. That's how he knew where I was at. I didn't care about getting promoted. I cared about coming into work and not being scared every day. I had
Right.
to see this guy in faculty meetings. I had to see him in the hall. I had to, I was constantly just sneaking around. Forget trying to walk into a new job and do well. I just was trying to sort it all out. And when I went to the boss above this guy, the dean, I was told if I didn't like it there, I should just leave. Well, how many French horn professors have you known? You know,
Right.
there's not a lot of them out there. There was
Right.
nowhere for me to go. And if you leave a tenure track position like that with a big black mark on your record, you're not going to get another one. It's too tight. They're too competitive. It's too hard to get. So I started digging my way through the system, and I went to HR. I went to the ombuds. I went to the union. I talked to everybody that I could within the university, because there was like this naive part that thought I could still salvage it, when what I probably should have done is called the police. But I was like, no, no, I can fix this. I can make it better. I can do it. But I ended up where my colleagues wouldn't talk to me. HR ended up doing a big sensitivity training. So at that point, I mean, people knew something had happened. And I was damaged goods. Everybody just, you know, we're not getting in the middle of this. We're not, because that's one of the things when you were talking about being alone. Sometimes when you feel alone, you don't just feel alone out in the world, you feel alone within your organization. And I did. I mean, if I wanted to be really serious about it, I would say that this person who did this to me could have had psychopathic tendencies, like actual by definition in the DSM-5. And our boss definitely displayed signs of narcissism. And
Wow.
I can't diagnose him. I'm not a therapist. I'm not pretending to, but I am saying I've done enough reading on it that the signs were there. And when you look at these toxic workplaces and these toxic leaders, narcissism in particular figures into a lot of them. So, and not just the whole, oh, he's a narcissist because he was selfish and took the last piece of pizza. It's not, we throw narcissism around a lot. I mean, like actual narcissistic tendencies. It's,
Absolutely. If you look at the behaviors, you look at how it's identified, I would attest as well as that the leaders at the organization, especially the ones who thought they were going to bully me indefinitely until I had to say, hey, hold on for a second, time out. This is your last day. You're not bullying me anymore. So
yeah,
until then, yes, if you look at those behaviors and the characteristics, you absolutely could say, if I were to take this alone, that this person displays these behaviors and we reward them for it and we
yes,
penalize the other person who they are attempting to victimize. And I say attempting to victimize because I do believe you have to take that on. Um, but it does not necessarily negate the fact of what's happening. Whether I identify as a victim or not, I am still experiencing this. It's uncomfortable. And as a leader, I would charge you to do something about this behavior instead of course, what people do is exactly what you said. And the same thing to me is that we stop talking to you because you're the problem, not the
right.
person who did it, but you're the problem because you're standing up and fighting against the system. You're speaking out and using your voice and your power and your influence and taking back your power. And by the way, kudos to you. I am just in awe sitting here looking at you for taking back your power. And I hope that anyone who is listening to our podcast together, that they find the courage just like you did to take back their power, own their voice, and to not stop. Because how easy is it when the system is telling you that you can leave? You can do this. We're not going to address it when you're being unsupported to stop speaking. And that's exactly what I did for a while is I stopped speaking. No one was there to empathize with what I was going through, to stand up for me. And again, as you said, I have, things that I need to do. I'm working on these particular goals. And so I need to be here. It's best for me right now. And we don't look at it. We look at why are they still here? And it's so easy to say, well, why are you still here? If that's the case. But you have a life and you have responsibilities and you have goals and you have other things. And so it's not always as easy as jumping up and leaving and moving on to the next thing
Yeah.
because we have things that are going on in our life. So you have to be able to balance that, but to still go in every single day, make that person look at you, make the system look at you and see that they cannot push you out. I think that's absolutely commendable. And I just want to thank you personally for being a voice for so many people who feel like they don't have a voice. And so I wonder how many other lives you saved on that campus because of what you did and the change that you actually made for those people that, that person, the leadership. Because one thing I do know is that one day you will have to attest and give an account to what you did. You don't get away with it. It's going to come back at some point. And I could see even in my own experience, those same leaders who did that, eventually the system pushed them out. You didn't get away. They didn't stand up for me, but you did it to somebody else. And that person had enough influence to push you out the system. And so how did you like when you had to leave? So it's always interesting to see how things come back around in some way, shape, or form. And we think that we're not necessarily effecting change, but you are. And so I would love to be able to see what you're doing, even now, how you took that experience. And so I want to talk about how you are now, speaking and teaching on, you know, empathetic leadership. Had that experience never happened, you would not be in this particular place, right? And so now look at
Yeah.
all the lives. And so it's been this, it looks like this upward journey of what you've been on. And so the trajectory hasn't been what you've created for yourself, right? I wouldn't have, as I say, I would have never written the story this way for my life, but this is the
Yeah.
story. And so I love, and I shared with you before how you were given this and you took it and did something with it. And so just share with us how you're now talking, speaking, writing about empathetic leadership.
Well, first, just thank you very much for your kind words, and I appreciate it because I was quiet too. I mean, when I left, I was very quiet for another 6 or 7 years because I didn't know what to
Wow.
do. And the thing with people like that is they push you down and they keep you quiet so long that pretty soon you keep yourself quiet.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's horrible, but that's the cycle,
Hmm.
So just I appreciate it. And to anybody who is listening, who's caught in this, who is in that quiet cycle, you don't necessarily have to speak up today, but you can take your power back when you're ready,
That's good.
you know? And I mean, that is what brought me to this, because without that, I wouldn't be here, because I couldn't figure out where the system had broken down. I mean, it was just like so pervasive. And, in this university where you think this is going to be the bastion of open thought and discourse, and oh no, it was the exact opposite. And people that I've talked to since then from all over the nation, they're like, yeah, whoever whoever put that in your head, that is not what this is,
Wow.
And but I just couldn't figure it out because where was the human connection? Why didn't anybody care? Why was it just fine to cast me out when I hadn't actually done anything to anybody? I just was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I kept coming back to this idea of empathy and the idea that it's about human connection. It's about how we interrelate as humans. And the more I got into it, especially with me, the leadership side of things, the more I was like, we can fix this if we want to. We can change this if we want to, you know? I kind of backed into it by looking at the toxic leadership side of things and narcissism in particular. And I'm like, what's the antidote to this? What can we do that shifts away from this darkness? And it always came back to empathy. So we can change this.
Wow. When you think about your experience and you say it came back to empathy, the break in the system, what would that have looked like for you at that time? That perhaps will not have you on this journey right now. Have you ever thought about that? What would you have liked to have seen?
If I had been able to go to the chair of my department, I mean, at any point in that chain, someone could have showed empathy and it would have changed the whole thing. But even starting from the beginning, if I'd have gone to my chair and said, look, this is what happened, and he would have said, we need to look into this. You can't just make an accusation. But in the meantime, can we get you in a better place where you can actually do your job? Because I was scared to be in the building. I was sinking, you know, or had I gone to the dean and she had said, same thing, we need to look at this. We need to, figure out what's real and what's not, which I understand. I mean, here I'm coming in and I'm making this accusation, and I wouldn't expect anybody to just take it at face value. I would want them to dig deeper, mostly because I know he was doing this with other people. And I would love for them to have dig deeper and found all of it. But even if she had just said, look, we just want you to be able to do your job, why we hired you, why we are paying you to be here. When I went to HR, instead of doing a big sensitivity training, which outed me and put a big target on my back, why not say, look, these are the rules. This is how we can go through this with HR. We need to address this, but we're not going to be so heavy-handed about it that we're going to make you a scapegoat. When I went to the union, he handed me a book on the bully in the workplace. He didn't even want to hear about it because it didn't even have to do with the union as far as he was concerned. He was very nice. He was not mean in any way, But that was his solution, was to hand me a book on the bully in the workplace, which, spoiler alert, the end of the book said, if it's bad enough, then get out of the job.
Wow.
So,
Right.
that
We know
chain
that
could have been broken at any point.
exactly, exactly. It's really wild how we have all of these opportunities all along the way. And I never once, and I guess I should have, so shame on me, never once thought when you mentioned the dean before that it was a female. And
Yeah.
one of the things that we find or studies show is that when there has been some type of assault or violation, women are normally much harder on other women than male counterparts.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
wonder, why is that? Why is that? And what happens if we bring our humanity, just our basic level of care for someone else, into the workplace? And we talk about, which brings me to another thing that you talk about, emotional intelligence and the role of emotional intelligence and empathy in leadership. Why don't you talk to us about that?
So, emotional intelligence, I mean, we've been talking about it. It first showed up in an article in 1990. The big book on it came out in 95, and that was Daniel Goleman,
Hmm.
specifically talking about how EQ is more important than IQ in the
Absolutely.
workplace.
Right.
Yeah. So we've been messing around with this for 35 years.
Hmm.
And
Of
we
course.
still can't seem to get it to work efficiently and effectively in these workplaces,
Right.
you know? And I
Mhm.
think it's because they've thrown empathy into the bucket. So when you look at emotional intelligence, right, it's like a whole bunch of skills. It's communication and motivation and direction and all this stuff that's in this bucket. And it's hammers and saws and chisels and whatever else you want in there. We've always thrown empathy in that bucket. But I think we need to pull empathy out and start with it, because we need to be able to understand and connect with our people first. That way, when you're reaching into that bucket, if you're reaching into there for a saw or a left-handed screwdriver. I think we've just like thrown emotional intelligence at stuff without first connecting with our people to understand what they need. So it isn't really emotionally intelligent at all. It's just going through the motions.
That is so true. I can definitely see that. One of the things I share with leaders is they want to build their credibility. You absolutely must start caring for your people and creating connection.
Yes.
And you cannot do that with you being only focused on what you need, what you want, what's important to you, and not understanding who's on the other side. For us today, it's who's on the other side of the camera, right? Who's on the other side of the lens. But when we decide that we're going to care for your people, it's the game changer in leadership. They begin to care more about what it is that you're talking about. But again, as you said, you actually also know what it is this person needs, what's driving them, how you can actually support them in the workplace to get to all of the other things. But we take that one out and we don't even slow down enough to empathize or learn the other person or care for them or, any of those things. It's all about the work, the work, the work.
Yeah.
While we say that we're being emotionally intelligent, and we're coming up on a shift that's happening right now where we're with AI, of course, and some of us
Yeah.
are I would say we're overly relying on the tool that is supposed to be a tool. And so whenever we over rely on something where you're compensating for one thing, but you're also, losing something else. And so I wonder, how will that even the more be able to impact the workplace, how we show up, how we lead in the workplace? So how do you see the role of empathy actually evolving? I'm going to say within the next 5 to 10 years, just because, of course, right now everyone is all in. And so
Yeah.
it's the thing in 10 years, though, even 5 years, but 10 years, I can see us, it's kind of like our phone and computers today. It's just something that we have that we use. But then there's going to be, I won't go there. I'll just stop right there and let you tell us with the shift that's happening. What role do you see empathy playing in the workplace? I have some thoughts on that, but I'll save that.
Well, I think if leaders are smart, they're going to understand that AI can't do empathy. It can mimic empathy.
Exactly.
And the scary part is sometimes it mimics it better than humans.
Mhm.
That's why people fall into this trap of thinking that it's a human and it's not. So it mimics it very well, but it doesn't have empathy. So intelligent leaders that really want to supercharge their skills for the future will understand that because of this lack of empathy, there's now a void that they can step into and they can actually use this skill like a craftsman. If you become very adept at being able to use it and understanding how to use it to connect to your people, those are going to be the heavy hitters of the future. Because the more we get into AI and the more people just rely on it, the more there's going to be a lack of empathy because it's
Absolutely.
just going to be, status quo. So those that can figure it out, oh yeah, they're going to be the big ones coming up soon. And they're going to be the ones everyone's going to look at and go, well, how do you do that?
Right. Absolutely. I would agree with that. I think that's the thing that leaders, I'm going to say leader people most need to hear is that we cannot allow this skill to go by the wayside. You can't
Yes.
overly rely on this. You've got to maintain your ability to empathize with people, your people skills, the ability to truly connect and care for people and demonstrate that without just saying it. Because,
Yes.
like the tool can have lip service, but they cannot carry it out, as you say.
Yeah.
So, what's the business case that leaders can actually create? Or what's the business case, I would say, for empathy and leadership?
So there was a survey that came out by Ernst and Young in like 2021, 2022, somewhere in there. And it was in response to the Great Resignation. They specifically were asking leaders and employees about empathy in the workplace. Because one of the problems with the pandemic is when we all got sent home, employees figured out that, oh, gee, my leaders can have empathy. Oh, so this is possible. So they specifically were asking about empathy in the workplace. And what they found out was that the leaders who could most effectively use empathy were able to raise productivity by 87%, innovation by 86%, and profit by 84%. And this isn't my opinion. This is what Big Four consultancy Ernst and Young came up with. So, I mean, the business case is there.
That's solid because they are I'm going to say a revered consulting firm, right? So we look at
Yeah,
them and people are in awe of them. And so they are the standard. And we have this thought that empathy in the workplace, period, especially in leadership, that it's soft and not
yeah,
necessarily a soft skill, just that it's soft. There's no hard results that it doesn't prove anything. So I love that you bring that data for us and you're giving us the business case of why this is important and why we need to embed this in how we actually lead every single day. Now, we
yeah,
know that in the workplace, there are going to be tough conversations. You're going to have
yep,
those crucial conversations, challenging conversations, accountability conversations, whatever we want to call it. I was listening to someone today who called me absolutely irate about somebody on the team who is not pulling their weight on a team that she is on. And she began to share that with her leader. And her leader has not been able, in all this time that I've been working with this particular leader, her leader is not able to have the crucial conversation, the needed conversation with her colleagues or with her direct reports, which is impacting the team. And so
yeah.
there are going to be times where you have to have this tough conversation. What does it look like embedding empathy in a tough business conversation?
Well, I think the first thing to mention is that having empathy doesn't mean you don't have boundaries. And that's either personal or in business. Business has got to get done. Allowing everything to sink because of one person's bad actions would not be showing empathy to the entire rest of the team.
Right?
So that's this idea that it's soft and that it's coddling and that it's overly sensitive is a myth. That's not true. Empathy doesn't say that you should, you know, allow everybody to walk over the top of you. What it does say is you should try to understand and connect, right? Because there may be something else that's going on. And that then when the tough conversations need to happen, they need to be done with kindness. Now, when I say kindness, I don't mean nice. I mean kind. Nice is a social construct. That's what we use to be polite, to be able to, it's like social lubrication. It makes it easier. When we're nice, we're doing it usually for ourselves because it's more comfortable. Kind means you're doing it with the best interest of the other person in mind. So if you have to let people do go, you don't do it by leaving a box of their stuff out by the back door. you know if you have to have a hard conversation, you're doing it because you want to see them grow and get better and be able to become more than they could have been otherwise, not because you're looking for someone to slap down because you had a rough morning you
Right.
know Business has got to run. If business doesn't run, business doesn't stick around very long.
That's
So
true.
there's nothing about empathy that says you shouldn't have those hard conversations, but you should approach them with empathy and kindness and, not like a Viking attack.
I love that because I mentioned business conversations, but as you were speaking, what was coming to mind was even in our personal conversations, we can still have empathy and talk about, discuss the things that we need to talk about, even in our personal relationships. But we can
Yeah.
do it with kindness. We still can be kind about the message that we're conveying, right? We don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be nice, but we can be kind and we don't have to, allow anything to just go as well. We need to address the things, even in our personal lives, that need to be addressed. Game changer. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for that. Thank
You
you.
bet. And that's the beautiful thing with empathy is you don't leave it at work. It's a transferable skill everywhere.
That is so true. Even at the grocery store.
Absolutely. Even on days when you're like, oh my God, she's writing a check. She's got a whole book of coupons.
Don't talk
Whoa.
about me. Do not talk about me because I still write checks. And I was at the store with a friend not too long ago, and I was writing a check, and she yells out, "Oh my gosh, she's writing a check!"
That's all right. I'm Gen X. It's cool.
Like, you are not going to embarrass me or humiliate me, and you ought to get tired of doing this because this is not your first time doing this to me. And as you can see, I am still holding on to my checkbook. I am still driving around giving this check because I am helping to keep people in business. I want you to remember that.
There you go. See, you were thinking of everybody else.
Exactly, exactly, because I'm kind.
Exactly. See, there you go. I like it already.
Before we wrap, I want to talk really briefly about your book. Your book dives into the power of EQ through the lens of empathy. What inspired you to write it, and what's the key takeaway or the one takeaway that you hope every leader walks away with?
So what really inspired me to write it was exactly what we were talking about in the beginning. We've been talking about emotional intelligence all this time and we still aren't effectively using it. What is the missing piece?
Mm,
And the more I studied empathy, the more I was like, I think this is it. I really think this is it. And, you know, even if I'm not 100% right, so what? It's better than what we're doing or what a lot of what's going on out in the world. So what have we got to lose exactly, other than nothing?
right.
So that's what really brought me to that and why I really believe I get wound up about it. I don't mean to, but it's like let's try it. What have we got to lose?
What do we have to lose? That's the thing. What do we have to lose?
Yeah,
It's a new skill, or could be a new skill, should not be a new skill. But
yeah,
what do we have to lose?
right. It's a brand new way of looking at an old concept, and maybe this will be the thing, you know?
Agreed, agreed. So, where can our listeners find your book? Where can they find more about you? How can they work with you? I know that's a lot, but
So, oh, that's okay. No, I appreciate it. So, my book is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and anywhere on the internet the book is sold. And you can do it in hardcover, softcover, Kindle, or there will be an audio book version out probably in the next month or so. So,
oh,
because a lot
wow.
of leaders listen in their cars. So, I want them to be able to have access. And then for me, you can catch me at my website, which is EQ and that's V as in Victor, IA, empathy.com. And you can sign up for my newsletter there. You can actually get a free chapter of the book if you want to just check it out and see what it's all about. And then, of course, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, and I have a podcast called The Empathic Leader.
The
So,
empathic leader. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Melissa, for being with us today. You've given us some game-changing insights that we can actually use in our personal as well as our professional lives. Again, I want to thank you for all that you imparted into us. I know that if our listeners are anything like me, they walked away with powerful tools and strategies that they can actually use in their own lives. And thank you for giving us the courage to take back our voice wherever it's been stolen.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for giving me that voice. And I hope that anyone else that feels that they have been silenced, when they're ready, can take that off.
I love when you say when they're ready. Whenever
You
you're
don't lead
ready,
like
you can
everyone
take that
else,
off.
so your resources
We'll see you
shouldn't
guys
look
back
like
here
everyone
next week.
else's. I created the Game Changer Leadership Collection for high impact leaders like you, visionaries, change agents, decision makers who lead with intention and influence. This free high impact resource pulls from my leadership arsenal and delivers immediate actionable insights you can use right now to elevate your influence, lead with conviction, and drive lasting transformation. It's not just a toolkit, it's your first step toward leading at the level you were born for. Let me show you what's inside. The Leadership Edge Sampler. It's a preview of my 10 daily power skills to sharpen your influence and impact. The Influence Language Mini Guide. Essential phrases to increase your authority and build trust in every room you walk into. The Leadership Blind Spot Snapshot. Because the greatest risk are the ones we don't see. The power of one visual aid. A reminder that even one decision, one tone, or one conversation can shift a team or stall a movement. The Executive Briefing Checklist, a go to tool for high stakes communication that drives clarity and alignment. The 5 minute accountability brief, a no fluff framework to build a culture of ownership fast. And we have the Game Changer Ascension Model Overview, my proprietary leadership growth map to help you scale your influence with intention. These are the very same tools I use with executives, culture shapers, and elite teams, leaders who know what's at stake and aren't here to play small. Because when you're called to shift systems, influence nations, and build legacies, you can't afford to lead on autopilot. This is where your next level begins. Download the Game Changer Leadership Collection today. It's free, it's strategic, and it's built for leaders who are born to shift the game. I'm Dr. Sharalyn Payne, and this is your Leadership Edge. Thank you for joining me on The Game Changer with Dr. Sharalyn, where we don't follow trends, we set them, and we don't just lead teams, we shift legacies. If today's message challenged, stretched, or inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, tag it, lead through it. Because real leaders don't just consume wisdom, they multiply it. Want to go deeper? Subscribe to the Ultra Influential newsletter for exclusive tools, behind the scenes strategy, and weekly mindset shifts for the leader ready to move nations, markets, and minds. Visit www.smpistrategies.com or send a note to leadership@smpistrategies.com. And if you're ready for next level coaching or consulting that positions you as the right leader at the right time in the right place, let's talk. This is what we do, and we do it with precision, power, and purpose. Remember, change isn't just something you lead, it's something you become. Stay bold, stay brilliant, stay a game changer.